As always with history, the real story is so much more interesting than the nonsense that they spout on the left. When he arrived, there were very peaceful, lovely Indians that he encountered, the Taino Indians. Those Taino Indians also had a lot of scars on their body. That's because there were bellicose Indians nearby from the Isla de Caribe, which is where we get the word cannibal. It's because of the cannibals of that Caribbean island. They talk about replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. I wonder, which indigenous people should we name the day after? Should we name them after the Comanche, who stole their land from the Apache? Should we name them after the Iroquois nation, the cannibals of the Iroquois nation, who were a fearsome confederacy and warred with one another all the time? Which people should we name them after? I think when you get into the real history, it gets a little murkier, and Christopher Columbus starts to look a lot better.
I know, it sounds like maybe you need to be talking to Elizabeth Warren to get your history straight, because this doesn't sound like the stories the left's telling today. One of the other claims, by the way, besides the mass genocide, I want to debunk that right now. There wasn't mass genocide committed by Christopher Columbus. They did bring with them unintentionally viruses and diseases from the old world that the Native Americans didn't have immunities to, but the 19 million or so, the 95% of the 20 million Native Americans who lived in the Americas that died of diseases, not because someone purposely went out and slaughtered them. They died of diseases. That's two entirely different things. But address this one. A lot of leftists say, well, Christopher Columbus, regardless of the context of history, he stole America. This wasn't his land. He came. Someone else was already here. Yet he drove them out and set up his own society. That makes him, you know, just terrible.
Well, whose land was it? I don't know whose land it was. You know, certainly the course of all of human history, not just in the Old World, not just in Asia, but also in the New World, is of various peoples going into different territories and taking land from them. We see this play out time and time again. This was happening after the settlers landed at Plymouth, and the Wampanoag Nation was taking land from some of their compatriots and some of their competitors in the region. So this has always gone on. But I will make the point with Christopher Columbus, because they portray him as this crazed killer who just went in slaughtering and stealing land from people. Compared to the Spaniards that he was with, Christopher Columbus was actually a pretty nice fella. You know, the one document that portrays him as mean-spirited was written by Francesco de Bobadilla, who was his political rival in the region. It would be like Hillary Clinton writing about Donald Trump, and then you say, okay, Trump was a bad guy. Bartolomé de las Casas, one of the great defenders of the Indians in the region, he wrote admiringly of Columbus and said that Columbus was very nice to many natives. He adopted an Indian who was the son of a friend of his. He adopted him as his own son. And Columbus regularly wrote in his letters and diaries and bemoaned all of the Spaniards who were treating the Indians poorly, because he was devotedly Christian and Catholic, and in many ways bemoaned the mistreatment of the Indians in the New World. Even though he wasn't perfect, he certainly wasn't this awful, crazed killer.